Good afternoon, guys. It is September 27th, 2023. On this video here, I want to discuss some of the differences between high-end vacuum cleaners. Um, Now, a lot of this is pretty obvious to most of us that are collectors or enthusiasts. But for the average consumer, it's not as clear and obvious to them. Basically, when you're buying in a higher price range, once you surpass the $200 to $300 mark, in my opinion, it is so important to get something that is very, very sturdy and is built to last a long time. Now, a lot of people think that Dysons are, the greatest and the highest end. If you're talking just regular, you can walk into any, department store such as Target, Costco, Amazon, wherever else, QVC, HSN, all that stuff, sure, it's one of the most premium top-of-the-line machines that's available on that level. However, there's a whole lot more to vacuum cleaners than just, cyclonic technology or never loses suction technology or whatever you want to call it. First of all, the vacuum cleaner industry has misled so many people for years and years. They market everything as having strong suction. Everything's got to be powerful suction. Everything's got to be, cyclonic, and everything's got to be all this and that. And the truth is, suction is not what cleans carpeting. You need agitation, which is created by the brush roll, and it's supposed to vibrate and massage the carpet fibers to loosen the dirt, to vibrate it to the surface, and then the suction or airflow can pick it up. Because without that, you're never ever going to get your carpet thoroughly cleaned of dry soil. It's just not going to happen. And especially here in America, other parts of the world, they may have more hard floors, than we do, or, lower pile carpets. But we actually have a pile to our carpet. We have fibers that need to be stood up. We have a padding to our carpet. We have a nap to our carpet here in the United States. And so, I have some viewers that watch me from Germany and the UK and, different parts of the world. So I understand that some of you guys in those different parts of the world, you may have differences than we do here in the United States. And so the same thing may not apply to you, but at the end of the day, its cleaning performance, but also its longevity. Um, Dysons just, I mean, they can last a long time. I mean, I've seen Dysons that last, 10, 15 years. Um, but the way they're designed, in my opinion, I'm really not a fan of them for longevity. When it comes to looking at longevity, um, Dysons are all plastic, and so um, that just adds more to break. And you can argue that there's other machines that are all plastic too, and that's very true. But Dyson has been notorious for having very thin plastic, especially in recent years. It's just gotten kind of scary thin, to be honest. Um, and, that is a concern for me, and especially when you're paying several $100s for a vacuum cleaner. I mean, you want it to last. And, I hate to tell you this, but, Dysons just have a notorious thing for having issues. I mean, I've serviced one for somebody else, and, it felt like it was gonna crack. And I mean, some of it was like I was being as gentle as I could, but like, a tiny piece did end up, getting a crack, because it just gets brittle over time. And, you can argue that for other machines too, such as, Bissell's and Hoovers and stuff like that, and that's very true. But Dysons have been notorious for being that way. Now, I will say that there are some advantages to Dysons over Sharks. One thing is you can access the brush roll 1,000 times easier on a Dyson than you can on a Shark. So that's one thing I will praise Dyson for, and I do appreciate about Dysons. I'm not completely against Dysons, I really am not. But as somebody who, I guess, looks at things from a longevity perspective, and I'm not talking about just longevity as in like, oh, it lasts and then once it breaks, it's done. I'm talking about longevity as in like being able to get parts for it, being able to service it, being able to replace worn parts, having parts that last, having parts that are resistant to breaking, resistant to wear, and just have a longer lifespan. And there's such a gap in quality between a Dyson and a Kirby or a Sanitaire. I mean, there just is. And, now, I will say that, some people argue that, the weight of a higher quality machine, such as a Kirby, is a concern. And I totally get that, and I totally understand that 100%. As a matter of fact, before this video, I did weigh all three of these, and the numbers I got was the Dyson was 17.9 pounds, I believe. So this Dyson is on the heavier side. It's not light, but it doesn't weigh a ton. But 17 to 18 pounds might be a bit much for somebody, and I get that. Now, the sanitary was about the same at like 17.8 pounds or something like that. Um, and this was all just with the cord on it and everything like that with all three of these. And then the Kirby was 24.4 pounds. So, I completely understand the weight issue, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that one bit. You know, um, honestly, I think you're better off with an Auric or something along those lines if you really want a lightweight machine and something to last, because Aurics are built to last for like 30 years, 40 years, easily, all the time. I mean, they're based off of a commercial machine. And so, I do have an Auric. I didn't bring it down, for this video, but I do have an Auric. It's upstairs. But yeah, so again, I do understand the weight issue, but here's where I'm coming from with all of this. Um, you know, you can have the lightest weight machine, but it doesn't mean that it's gonna hold up. And you can have the heaviest machine, and it doesn't mean it's gonna hold up either. You know, it's just the way it's built. And unfortunately, Dysons are not built to the level that I would consider. Now, if these Dysons were like, let's say $100 or less, I wouldn't really care too much about the build quality of them. But if I'm spending $300, $400, $500, $600 on a vacuum cleaner, I demand build quality. I demand attention to high wear parts. I demand the ease of maintenance and repairs and being able to get into it to repair it, including the motor. And excuse me. And basically, when it comes to Dysons, you can't easily get into them that easily. There's so much in there. And I'm not saying it's impossible, because I have replaced a cord on a Dyson before. So it can be done. Now the cord goes in at the top. Let's see if I can pan this up a little bit. It goes in at the top here, where the power buttons are. And you just take the power buttons, front off, and then it just like snaps in and out, and you gotta kind of snake it in. But it's still a pain, because the buttons like to fall out, and you're trying to get everything lined up and everything like that. Sanitaires can be a pain to replace the cord on too. I've replaced a cord on this one, and let me tell you, it is not easy getting that grommet into that hole there. It's just not. Um, However, the Kirby, you know, it's basically like a computer cord. You know, if you've ever seen those old, you know, cords that plug into the back of a computer or a printer or something like that, that's basically what it is. It just sticks in the side and it clips in with a few clips and screws, and you're done. There's no, taking things apart. There's no, opening up the motor. There's none of that. And so it's so simple. Um, Now, when it comes to most of the repairs, the sanitaires tend to be a little bit easier because you can just pop the top off and, get access to the motor and all of that. But still, you know, you just get in there, you can replace the motor, you can replace the fan, you can replace the gaskets, you can replace, the wheels, it's so simple and so foolproof that it's ridiculous. You cannot do that with a Dyson. It's not going to happen. I'm going to tell you that right now. It's not going to happen because there's so much going on and it's so complicated that for you to easily get in there and repair something is not going to happen. Um, you know, Getting it unclogged and, simple stuff like that shouldn't be that big of a deal. If you needed to do something with the brush roll or something, that should be fairly easy. But the main machine, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine what all is involved in that. And that's just something that I think about. And plus, just the construction of machines. There's a big difference in the construction of these machines. And, when it comes to, especially if you're really trying to make a good investment and you want this vacuum to be the last vacuum you buy, at the very least, look at something like an Oric. Now the Kirby's, I understand, they're like $1,000, $1,500, something like that. I totally get that they're way more expensive than a Dyson. I completely get that. But the cost of a Dyson is about the same cost as a sanitaire. Not even a direct air sanitaire, but just a clean air sanitaire with tools on board. And you get pretty much the same amount of tools and the same amount of stuff. And guess what? It's more simple. It's easier to repair. It's built with longevity in mind because it's a commercial grade machine. And so you gotta think about all those things. Now, I will say, I had somebody comment on my last video, and I totally agree with this point, and I get where he's coming from. First of all, I'm going to say that the Kirby is not for everyone, and I completely understand that. This is not just about Kirby's. This is about pretty much everything that is a commercial grade type machine. And Kirby's aren't necessarily considered commercial grade, but I mean, are you kidding me? Like, the whole thing is die cast aluminum. I mean, the whole thing is a tank. So, I would consider it a commercial grade machine. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a commercial unit, although it can handle it, and I've seen a lot of examples of that. But, you know, this guy was saying, oh, Kirby's are just so heavy, and, people say that Dysons just don't last as long and stuff, and they do, and all this stuff. And I get where he's coming from, because I've seen 15-year-old Dysons that are still running perfectly fine. And I think it also depends on your household. If you're a household with pets, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but if you're a household with pets, Dysons are not the best option. I mean, they just aren't. Because the air path in them is so narrow, and if you're picking up a lot of hair and stuff like that, unfortunately, I don't think it can handle that, because the openings are so narrow. I mean, there are machines that have wider openings, such as Abyssal Power Force. It has wider openings and allows hair to flow through easier, and these Dysons just have such narrow openings, it just doesn't make sense. But also, I'm going to show a few things, towards the end of this video. I know this video is going on kind of long, but there's a lot of information that I have on this. With those openings being so narrow, if you have a lot of pet hair and a lot of stuff going through there, especially for the average consumer, the openings aren't wide enough to resist clogging, and it's just one of those things that you've got to really think about. Now, if you don't have pets and you don't have kids, and maybe you're retired, maybe, I don't know what the case may be. It might be a good option for you. Because I will say that the Dyson, from what little testing I've done, and I've only had this a couple days, but I wanted to get this video out here because Dysons are so popular, and I get a lot of questions about some of these machines, and I will not buy a brand new Dyson just to review. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't afford it, and I can't justify throwing away $400 for a machine that is all plastic and doesn't have a lot of longevity in mind. That's just my personal thing. But yeah, it was a trash find, and so it was barely used, and I got it unclogged. It was only clogged in the wand. Yeah, it's crazy. But basically, you know, I have machines that I've bought used for less than $400. That Kirby Ultimate G on the far left, I bought that used for $100 almost 6 years ago. And it was 19 years old. It's now 20 years old. And it literally wears so gracefully. You know, it doesn't show its age very easily. It doesn't tend to just break and, you know, have pieces break off of it. A Dyson, I mean, you could probably make it 20 years with a Dyson, you know, and it all depends on, you know, how well you maintain it and how well you take care of it. But the truth is, eventually, those plastics are going to become brittle and start breaking on you. It's just going to happen. And so, and not to mention, you know, the parts are more expensive. I mean, when they do break, I mean, some of those parts are outrageously expensive. Like, super expensive. Like, for example, a combination dusting brush / crevice tool, brand new, was like $22 on Amazon for one tool. So, you know, and yes, you can argue that brand new, genuine stuff is always going to be more expensive, but Dysons are just notorious for that. I mean, Dysons are basically like the Apple product of vacuum cleaners and things like that. I mean, they just are, because, you know, any of you who have had Apple products, such as an iPhone, an iPad, you know, a MacBook, whatever it is, you know that Apple charges an outrageous amount of money for the genuine charging cables, the genuine charging blocks, the genuine headphones, stuff like that. But yeah, it just, you know, when it comes to that, it just gets really expensive. Like, if you needed a whole bin assembly, that's like $60, $70, $80 just for a bin assembly. And if you needed a cleaner head, that's like $120. And mind you, those are all plastic parts. So, but with the Kirby, you know, yes, the outer cloth bag can be expensive, like, you know, close to $100. You know, if you need a new nozzle, which honestly, like, needing an entire new nozzle, like, I don't think you're really gonna ever have to do that, unless something crazy happens to it. I don't think you're gonna need that. You know, it's about $110, $115. But you get higher quality with some of these machines. Now, again, there is a price difference, and I get that. But, like I said, a Sanitaire is about the same price as a Dyson, and their parts are built better. They have a wider selection of parts, and It's just foolproof. And so, yeah, that's just something that, you know, you need to be aware of when you're shopping for a vacuum cleaner. And this is all my personal opinions and what I see. Um, you may very well want a Dyson, and that is okay. I mean, I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying just never buy a Dyson because they're absolute garbage or anything like that. Yes, there are some machines that I strongly think are that way. And Sharks, to be honest, are kind of that way. Because you can't get into the cleaner head, and they don't do a good job of providing customer service. They don't do a good job of providing replacement parts or part numbers, schematics, any of that. And so when I look at machines, I look at that as a whole. I still, recommend cheaper machines such as like Hoover, Bissell, some of those machines. Are they the greatest? No, but for the money, they're pretty good, and you can get parts for them. Whereas, Shark, you pretty much can't. And Dyson, yes, you can get parts for them, but the parts are going to be outrageous. And so you've got to think about, like, long term, what are you willing to spend, and maintenance costs down the road, if something goes out. You can get aftermarket filters for Dysons, and you can with Sharks too. I will say that they've done better with that with Sharks. But again, with the Sharks, the brush roll housing and some of that stuff is such a pain to deal with that I just don't really see the point in it, And so there's so many issues. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the differences with these. And a lot of my audience, you're already familiar with this, and I get that, but I'm mainly going to be doing this for the average consumer. So we're going to look at the Dyson and the Kirby. Now, these are basically two different classes of machine, pretty much. But when you're looking at these, you want to know what you're looking at. A Dyson is, honestly, when you're looking at Dysons, they spend so much money and so much time marketing and advertising and putting on big shows, making them look pretty, making them look fantastic. And I'm here to tell you that yes, they may be good for the money, but they're not the best. Now, again, these are two different price categories here, and metal plastic. So, and again, I understand the weight issue, and this is in no way saying that, a Kirby is the only option. This is just the best example that I have of a true quality machine. Now, when you look at this, there is, let me see if I can get this in shot here. If I can recline it and turn it over. When you look at this, this is literally your air intake right here. It's about that big, maybe even smaller. And you got all this area that has nothing, and it's all just, now it's centrifuge suction, which is a good thing. I will say that that is a good thing because it kind of distributes it evenly, or at least it tries to. But when you look here, this is literally all of where the dirt goes. For some reason, there's this guard here, and it all has to come through here to get into this thing. Larger debris is not going to be able to get through there. Large clumps of hair is going to get stuck in here. And this machine had that problem when I got it because the previous owners had a dog with fairly fluffy hair, almost like golden retriever hair or something like that. I don't think it was a golden retriever. I forget what it was, but it was fluffier hair. So, that's where I'm saying the problem might come, especially for pet owners. But also if you have kids, it's just, it's interesting. So, there's that. And then you have this, which twists and bends and all this stuff. And don't get me wrong, this does do a good job. It gets the job done, But for the money, I don't know if it's the greatest idea. For some people, I think it is. I will say that if you have, a very, very clean house and like all hard floors, a couple area rugs and stuff, one of these Dysons might be excellent for you, And, you just have to make that decision for yourself. I'm not saying, never buy a Dyson. I'm not saying they're crap. I'm not saying any of that. But what I'm saying is there's a big difference in quality, and you can hear all the creaking and stuff, It may sound weird, but to me, this creaking does not indicate quality. To me, it just doesn't. Now, let me see if I can push that out of the way. Okay. Now, if we look at a Kirby, pull off the belt, and look at the nozzle. Now here's the opening. This is like 3 times wider than the opening on that Dyson. There's so much air going through there. Not to mention that it's all wide open to this. There's no hoses, nothing like that to get clogged up. And then this is what is called a direct air machine. Because the fan this is literally the fan that creates the suction and the airflow. Because the fan is literally 3 inches from the floor, you are going to get incredible performance, and especially on carpet. You know, nothing will ever beat a direct air machine. You know, for the most part, nothing will ever beat a direct air machine. Now, there are some direct air machines that are better than others, and I will say that, you know. I think that the Sanitaire, honestly, might have a little bit higher performance than a Kirby, but not by much. So, it all depends on what you want. And Oryx are the same way. They have a fan that's literally 3 inches from the floor, and it pulls everything through the fan, blows it up the boot here, and then it blows it into the bag. Now, a lot of people in today's, you know, society have frowned upon the idea of a bag. But honestly, bags are much cleaner, and they're just easier to just take them off, throw them away, you're done with them, and you put a fresh bag in. It's just like changing your furnace filter or your air filter on your car or something like that, you know. So, and these are huge bags, you know. I get 6 months out of a bag, easy, at least. And then this hose is what carries everything into the bag. That hose is literally 3 inches in diameter. Okay? That allows for so much air velocity to push through there and be able to, you know, get it moved through. Now again, we looked at a Dyson here, and you know, it's got this tube, but it's not as big as the tube on the Kirby. The tube on the Kirby is about that big. The tube on the Dyson, let me see if I can, my fingers around it. It's about that big. So, and Dysons literally suck everything into the canister. The Kirby pulls everything through the fan, and then it blows everything into the bag. So it literally just pushes everything in. And the airflow is probably like 100 miles an hour or so. I mean, it's crazy. And most of the time you don't get that with a lot of your typical bagless vacuums, and it's such a direct path. Now, the multiple cyclones and stuff, honestly, I think is kind of, I mean, don't get me wrong, it does help. It does help keep the filter cleaner. It does help, you know, try and minimize stuff that gets in the filter. But this is such a direct shot with the Kirby that literally, you know, you can't get any more simple and high performance than that. You really can't. because the air spins so many times, there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 different points where the air just spins and spins. All that air going through a bunch of places just creates more turbulence, more restrictions, and slows down the airflow. The only reason you're getting high performance, or so-called high performance, is because you have the narrow openings on the Dysons, such as these tubes. Okay? So, like literally, that is, do you see that? That is tiny compared to, and yes, you have slightly wider hose, but still, it's still very narrow. Whereas the Kirby, here's the opening of the hose for the Kirby. It's still got a little bit of a narrow opening, but it allows air to flow through pretty good. And then it gets a little wider by the time it gets to the fan and the intake. And like I said, the fan is literally right there. So, now I want to show you this. I can actually fit the Dyson wand into the Kirby hose. This is not the best thing, because the more narrow your openings are, the higher the chance of it clogging, So, those are just some things that I wanted to point out and show you on these machines. And again, like I said, I have nothing against Dyson. I think they're wonderful machines for what they are. I think that they're really cool, honestly. I mean, they look like something out of another world. Something real futuristic and stuff. And they're cool. But again, you can have the coolest looking vacuum cleaner in the world, but if it's not going to perform well, and if it's not going to last, then, what's the point of that? So, and Kirby's last, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years all the time. I hate to tell you, folks, but you're not going to get 30 and 40 years out of a Dyson. I mean, it's just not going to happen. I can tell you that right now. I mean, because if plastics start breaking on a 20-year-old Dyson, and they just keep breaking, and Dyson is always reinventing the wheel. They're always changing designs. They're always adding new things. They're always, changing stuff. And it just makes it a pain in the butt to get parts for and fix, the older it gets. And again, I have a lady that, I go to church with, and she has a couple Dysons. And, she has an older DC-07, I believe. And it's still going. I mean, she said she's put parts in it and everything, and she absolutely loves them, and that's totally fine. I'm in no way, shape, or form saying that there's anything inherently wrong with Dysons, but I'm just showing the differences, you know, and you have to make these decisions for yourself, you know. If you feel that a Dyson is right for your home and that's what you want, go right ahead. I am not in any way, shape, or form saying that Dysons are bad. I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy a Dyson. But once again, I'm just saying that there is a difference in build quality, there's a difference in longevity, there's a difference in parts availability, there's a difference in parts pricing, there's a difference in how long you're going to get out of it. Because, yeah, it's, and plus, you know, it's like anything, you know, if you take care of it, it's going to take care of you. But, you know, there does come a point where things just become fragile and brittle and weak. And don't get me wrong, you know, on these Kirby's, you know, things can still break on them, you know. But they have thicker plastics that are more rigid and resistant to breaking. And so there's just different things that, you know, you gotta look at. You know, like this bin, all of these parts here are super thin plastic. I've seen where these break clean in half and have issues. It's just not good. And so, but yeah, and they make things just really complicated. And so, if something like this broke, you know, it'd be a pain to replace, and Dyson basically wants you to replace the entire canister, which again is like 60, 70, 80 bucks. So, it's just, I mean, you have to make that decision, and it's totally your decision to make, you know. I am in no way, shape, or form telling you that you can't buy a Dyson or you shouldn't buy a Dyson. You know, I think they're one of the best bagless vacuum cleaners I think that's available. But, you know, generally bagged vacuums are just going to be better. They're built with longevity in mind, and they're built with reality in mind. Because Dysons are built with marketing and flashy stuff that really isn't reality. You know, reality is, you know, you're going to have a lot of stuff going through it. You're going to have, you know, lots of pet hair. You're going to have lots of debris and stuff. And it's just the way it's set up. You know, I don't feel like it's going to be that great for it. But again, that's just my opinion. But anyway, I'm just rambling at this point. And this video has gone on long enough, and I think I've pretty much made my point. Again, the decision is up to you. It is up to you. You know, you buy whatever you want to buy. But I'm just trying to give the most information that I can. Because I want you to be able to get the most out of your money. I want you to be able to have a machine for 20, 30, 40 years, if possible. You know, I want that for people. you know? But it's your decision to make. So anyway, please like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos.